Hello, welcome back. So let me just tie a few threads from before. In some of the previous videos, I mentioned about the parable of the servants and the talent, as well as how we tend to perceive God, the way we perceive our parents. So the view that we see our parents is the way we see God sometimes, and I just wanted to come back to that point where because the third servant did not know his master, he thought he was a hard man, and but the other two knew that the master was a loving man and would reward them for uh, not hiding their talents and actually investing it and doing what the master wanted them to do in the first place. And I think it boils down to honesty. Like, if sometimes we are not honest because we are afraid of being punished, so we don't really know love. We have this fear that um, perfect love would cast out, would remove. Like, we knew this person, if you know someone really well, you know that the person has a heart and has love. But a lot of times people run their business or their lives or their families the way they run a business, or uh, you know um, they run it very very strict because there are certain rules, just like in the world has certain principles and laws and rules and regulations. Then we too need to kind of understand that people are not necessarily being um, very regimental, rigid, but because there are certain things in this world, that there are certain rules that we need to apply, certain principles that we need to live by. So once we understand that, we can kind of move forward. And now let's talk about conscience, because sometimes people think that voice inside um, of them, like there's this conscience that tells them this is right, this is wrong. So conscience is not God, but it's placed there by God to tell you what is right, what is not, and then it kind of like pokes you or prods you sometimes, and kind of moves you forward. So some people hear their parents in their head. They would, when they do something naughty or bad, they would hear, okay, little Charlie, you shouldn't do that. Sam, you should, not do that. Why do you keep doing that? And that kind of stuff. So sometimes people equate that to, like all the rules and regulations and laws and commandments that God has given us. So we also need to cross that hurdle, that conscience is something that you also need to deal with. So the conscience, like I said, is not God, but it is a good guide. It is like Jiminy Cricket, right? He kind of points you in the right direction, and it's like a moral conscience or moral order that helps you to move forward. So it keeps you away from danger. It keeps you away from mistakes. But sometimes the conscience is not perfect. It can be easily manipulated or deceived, and it can also be perverted, and then it can be twisted, right, in a morbid way. Especially if it's developed. If a person is developed, as they as they grow up and they develop, certain things might change the way the conscience works. This is why some people see God as a very domineering, punitive, judgmental, vengeful person. But it is not like that, and this is why we need to see God as the perfect parent, not like your parent, not like your parents. So sometimes we get a lot of hang-ups because of that, and I understand that. Um, it's because how you're brought up, and when in your developmental years, there are certain things that happen to you that may not happen to someone else. And so you might be a happy child, or you might be an unhappy child because of how your parents raised you, uh, and also the environment and different, there's many other factors, right? So what I'm trying to say is to look beyond um, to look at God as He really is, and not through the lens of your childhood, yeah, your through your own understanding. You need to go beyond your understanding. You got to kind of see God as He really is, and just trying to present Him as He is, and it is a challenge. So I think at the root of this, it is the fear um, of God in a very negative and wrong way. There's actually the right fear of God. There's the wrong fear of God. So if you have a normal fear of authority, right? If if your parents would threaten you all the time with different um, uh, example. Let me give you an example, right? Sometimes some parents would threaten or try to scare the kids to be good. So they would say things like, the cops are going to come for you, or like, I'm going to leave you here and go home. I'm just, if yeah, and then like, what else? Yeah, you're gonna get kidnapped. You're gonna, people are going to sell you as a servant or as a slave. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that maybe are ingrained into you, and it kind of takes root, even though you might not think so. So in certain cultures, there's a lot of threats, a lot of lies that the parents tell you just to scare the kid, and that's very unhealthy. And that's why some kids have an abnormal fear of authority. I mean, I know a lot of people in the urban areas where they the brothers and sisters are in gangs, and there's this hatred towards authority, in terms of the government, and the in different institutions like the police and the law, the lawyers, doctors. They actually hate some of these people, and just because the way they're brought up, and so they think they have an abnormal fear. They have and something abnormal, something not normal about it. It is not typical. Like, if you're sick, you should go see a doctor. You shouldn't, like, try to heal yourself and self-medicate, that kind of stuff, right? And then obviously, if you need help, there's a lot of like lawyer jokes, there's a lot of doctor jokes, a lot of dentist jokes. There's a lot of jokes that may have some truth in them, but at the end of the day, it might twist and distort someone's understanding of authority. And what does that do? It's kind of funny to some people, but actually it leads to something very, very dangerous, and it's like a poison. It can lead to an inability to relate and see the world as it should be, right? People become narcissistic, which means they're very self-centered. They care only about themselves and their pleasures and their immediate needs, and this can cause lots and lots of problems, and it has. I mean, it has caused human problems. um, and why do I mention all this is because these are all obstacles and possible hurdles that you need to cross over. And a lot of what happens when you're young affects how you see God. And this is what I'm trying to say, that if you see God through different lenses and through these experiences that you had, or things that have been imposed upon you, or you've been taught the wrong thing, you will see God as a distorted um, God, and God is not like that. So if you're looking for God and you think He's hiding from you, or He's difficult to find, it's because you might be seeing or looking for the wrong God, and God is not like that. So your developmental stage in life and your relationships with other people, it really helps you to build a concept of God. So what is God like to you? Right? Is God, the idea of God, or what God is like, founded on the idea of what your dad is like, what your father is like, or what your mom is like, or maybe more so your mother than your father, right? So again, role reversals. I talked about this the other day in one of my thoughts of the day. I might link it at the bottom in the description. Check it out. I said the world is changing. Yeah, I posted it a few days ago. So the world is changing and families are changing as well, and there's role reversals, and that could also mess people up big time. So especially if you're brought up in a single parent household, that could also affect it. If you're brought up in a home without a dad, or if you had two dads, or if you were brought up in a home without a mom or two moms, or no parents at all, just your grandparent or grandparents, or aunt or uncle, or brother or sister if everyone else is not around, that would also color and affect the way you view life, God, and other people, right? So there's something called the absent father syndrome, and a lot of kids have that. I'm actually reading a book about fatherlessness, which means people who grew up without father and without father. A lot of issues happen in that kind of life, and maybe I'll link the book I'm reading to the description as well. Um, so sometimes, especially if you don't have a father role model or male role model in your life, and you grow up, you become a father, right? Then you become a mean father. You become um, hmm, um, and a father that's not kind, not loving, not because you don't really know how to be a father, right? Because you were a child without a dad, without a father. So there's negative um, effects to that, especially, and that's I think that kind of causes people to have that abnormal fear of God, which is not healthy. It is actually very, very negative. So, um, okay, I'm going to wrap it up here today, and tomorrow I'm going to kind of talk more about understanding God, putting God. Sometimes we put God in a box, and we need to get out of that and stop doing that. And 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 other reasons why God might be hard to find for you. All right. So I hope you have enjoyed and learned something about this and start thinking about how you view God, because you view God, most people view God through their perspectives and their worldviews, right? If you see the world in a certain way, you see your family, life, parents, relationships in a certain way, that's how you see God. So think about that, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.